What kind of games did you play?
Well, on Sundays, we used to have church, Sunday school, and priesthood were in the morning, and then sacrament meeting was at night. And between those meetings, today it would be considered, not honoring the Sabbath day, but we used to play. Our yard was about a block long and had all kinds of barns and sheds and one thing and another, and so we'd have the neighbor kids come over, and we'd play hide and seek. So you'd hide, and then you would try to sneak up to, the main place was right behind the house. So you'd go hide, and then you'd try to sneak by the one that was it, so you could get up and, get in free. And then we played some other games that were similar. I can't remember the names of them. One time we had big cottonwood trees along the roadway, and they chopped one of them down and parked it off the side of the road in the bar pit, we called it. And there was a big tree with the branches and everything, so we started playing in those branches and trees, climbing that tree on that tree. And we had a fire out there. We chopped it when it got dry. We chopped off some branches and made a fire, and you're supposed to run in and jump over the fire, so so you could be in. That was the way you got in, was to jump over the fire, if it wasn't too big, of course. But we did a lot of running and climbing and jumping all over. And in the winter, we would slide down the barns. When the snow came, they became our ski lifts, I guess, our ski things, because we could hold on the edge and climb up the top, and then we'd just sit down and slide down. Unfortunately, what was at the bottom wasn't always pleasant, because one of them had cows right there. But fortunately, their discharges were frozen, so it wasn't too bad. It didn't land in anything.
Did you have any hills around Iona that you could go sledding on?
No, not really. There were hills, but they belonged to private property. They were private property, and you couldn't go on them. And skiing wasn't a big deal then. They were just starting to get ski lifts around.
Not skiing, sledding.
Sledding. The only sledding we did was behind a car. We would tie a rope to the car, and Mother, or Darla's mother, would drive us around town a little bit on our sleds. That was the sledding we did. There weren't any hills or anything to play on.
Did you garden with your parents?
Oh my, yes. That's one of the reasons I don't like to garden now, because we did so much. We did so much when I was young. When I was little, my grandfather was still alive until I was about 8, and he took care of the garden. It was at the end of one of the fields, and it was a really, really big garden. But after he died, then we took care of it. Mother and we girls took care of the garden. And we had to plant and hoe. Dad prepared it with the tractors, but then we had to plant everything and hoe it and harvest it. And when we get through harvesting, we take it inside and can it. So it was a very busy time. Mother liked us to go out early in the morning when it was cool, which was best, but I was not really good as an early riser. But I would make myself get up anyway, so I could please my mother. And, we'd get everything picked and harvested when the time was right. But, like beans, you had to harvest every week, and peas you had to do every week. So we were canning beans and peas all week, and tomatoes, and constantly. And my dad had a gallbladder trouble, and he ate a quart of peaches every morning and about 3 or 4 egg whites. That was his breakfast every morning for years. And so one year we canned about 38 bushel of peaches, and we did apricots and a few cherries.
Where were all those peach trees?
They were in Utah. Dad would drive down and load up the truck and drive back. My aunt lived in North Ogden, and she had trees on her. They had trees, fruit trees, and so we'd go down and pick up all their peaches and apricots and a few cherries, and my cousin had raspberries, so we'd go pick raspberries and can a few of those. We filled up our
Why didn't you grow peach trees on your property?
peach trees didn't grow very well. I think it got too cold or something there, and they would freeze because they aren't in Idaho. They just didn't do well. So my dad hauled them home and we canned them. And my mother was still canning even when after school started. There'd still be a few peaches in a basket, and she'd go through them every day and find the ones that had gotten ripe, and then she'd be canning. Of course, we canned tomatoes out of the garden and carrots and just everything that could be canned, we canned because we used it for the winter's food. That was a great source of our food, was what we had canned in the summer.
That's kind of the farmer's way, though.
Yeah, it was. We didn't really have, you know, like, we didn't have much cash. We had milk cows. My dad milked night and morning, and we sold that milk. They got, I think, $400 a month. That was what cash we had for the whole month. And so we had to, you know, supply everything else, although we did go to the grocery store every week. Mother would buy a few things from the grocery store to add to it. She loved the green beans that were canned, so she'd get a can of green beans every once in a while just because she liked it, even though we had canned beans. She liked the taste of those that came in the can. And so we worked really hard one year in our dairy, and we made it a first, what do they call it? First grade 1 dairy. And that meant that it all had to be really clean and neat all around it and inside of it. So I got the job of washing the milking machines. So every morning before school, all through high school, I washed the milking machines. And I would go to school with my hands smelling like chlorine. That's what we washed them in. It only took about 10 minutes or so, but I didn't really like it that well. And sometimes, if I was going to be late or Dad wasn't quite ready, he'd tell me to go on, and he would do it. So.
Didn't you wear gloves to clean them, or?
Well, no, you didn't think of having rubber gloves. You know, rubber. I don't know if even rubber was available then. We might not have had rubber. So, I'm not sure, but we didn't have anything like that. And then every month or two, we'd have to do a really special cleaning of them because they'd get layered with, you know, the milk would kind of build up and they'd get gunky. So we had to really scrub them out that time. We had electric machines that my dad used to milk with, so that made his job go faster. He used to have up to 40 cows some of the time. But that meant we could never go on trips. We couldn't travel because we always had to do the milking. Year-round, night and morning. One year we decided we'd go to Yellowstone Park. We were only 100 miles away from Yellowstone Park. And so Dad got up really early and milked the cows, and we drove up to Yellowstone. We drove through most of it and came back. We got back about like 9 o'clock at night, and then he had to go out and milk the cows before he could go to bed. But he was always up early. He was up watering, like he'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to water. He'd water and milk cows, and then he'd come in for breakfast when we were up.